At 12:16 in the afternoon, Warrick Stock walked out of Zambesi House in central Johannesburg. Most South Africans knew him as DJ Warras, but there were no radio microphones around him that afternoon, no television cameras, no audience. Instead, Warras had spent part of the day overseeing security work at an 8-story building in the Johannesburg CBD, and investigators would later discover something chilling. The men accused of killing him were allegedly already there. One of the people later accused in the case was allegedly captured on CCTV with the suspected gunman roughly 45 minutes before Warras was shot. At 12:16, another camera recorded Warras leaving the building in a black t-shirt with another man beside him. He walked toward an Audi Q7 parked only a short distance away, close to informal street vendors. According to evidence later given by the investigating officer, Warras opened the passenger door. He briefly got inside. He was talking on his cell phone. Then he closed the vehicle, locked it, and started walking back toward the building. Less than a minute had passed. Approximately 54 seconds after cameras recorded him leaving Zambesi House, people in the street suddenly began ducking and running for cover. Gunfire had erupted. Warras was shot 5 times. And buried inside the CCTV footage were details that investigators would spend the next several months trying to piece together. A man in a green shirt, blue floral shorts, sandals, a cap, a yellow gift bag, another man waiting nearby, and a weapon that investigators believed may have been hidden inside that bag. Within moments, one of South Africa's best-known broadcasters was dying in the middle of Johannesburg. The men disappeared toward Fox Street, but cameras had been watching them. And when police eventually began putting names to the faces on those recordings, the story became much bigger than the murder of a celebrity. Because just 4 days earlier, Warras had taken legal steps against people connected to the very building he was trying to secure. He had reported threats. His team had allegedly uncovered illegal activity inside. There were allegations that somebody was making serious money from the building. And 8 months later, a 25-year-old man would walk into the Johannesburg High Court and admit that killing Warras had been a contract. The amount attached to his life? 25,000 rand. But even today, one question remains. If the man who fired the bullets was doing a job, who gave him the job? To understand why Warrick Stock was standing outside that building in the first place, you have to understand that the public knew only one side of his life. Most people knew Warras from entertainment. He built a broadcasting career beginning at YFM in 2008, later worked at 5FM, appeared on television, and returned to screens in 2025 as the host of Hlengiwe. But away from broadcasting, Warras had become deeply involved in the private security industry. And that part of his life placed him inside a very different Johannesburg. A Johannesburg of security contracts, property disputes, hijacked buildings, illegal occupants, and people who could potentially lose large amounts of money when control of a building changed hands. Through his security operations, Warras became involved with Zambesi House, an 8-story building in Johannesburg's inner city. His business associate, Nicole Nelson, later told EWN that Warras had been brought in to assist attorneys dealing with the building. According to Nelson, he wasn't simply providing guards. He was trying to develop what she called a blueprint for dealing with hijacked buildings in Johannesburg. His security company carried out an audit of Zambesi House in July 2025. And according to Nelson, what they allegedly found inside was disturbing. Building hijacking in Johannesburg doesn't necessarily mean someone breaks into an empty building and starts living there. It can involve groups taking effective control of properties, collecting rent from residents, and operating outside the authority of the legitimate owner. And according to allegations surrounding Zambesi House, money was central to the dispute. During later court proceedings, the state said an informal committee operating inside the building was allegedly collecting rent from tenants. One person, later named in Warras's protection order application, was alleged to be part of that committee. And according to evidence presented in court, the legitimate landlord was allegedly losing more than 200,000 rand because of the arrangement. But rent was not the only concern. Warras's business associate told EWN that his team's audit allegedly identified health and safety issues and possible criminal activity inside the building. She alleged that they encountered a brothel. She referred to the reported of a young girl weeks earlier, and she said she believed equipment found there may even have been connected to small-scale manufacture associated with Mandrax. Those claims were made by Warras's associate and should not be confused with findings that have all been proven in court. But they give important context to what his security team believed it had walked into. Warras wasn't just changing who stood at the front door. His team was tightening access to a building where there were allegations of money changing hands and illegal activities taking place. And that meant some people potentially had a lot to lose. By November 2025, according to a protection order application later read in court, Warras and members of his security team had allegedly received verbal threats on 2 separate occasions. Then, only 4 days before he was murdered, Warras made an application for protection against 6 people associated with Zambesi House. One of the names in that application was Hlengiwe Buthelezi, and this is where the later murder investigation begins to overlap with the dispute inside the building. Buthelezi was identified during court proceedings as the girlfriend of Victor Majola. Majola was a Soweto taxi owner. And after Warras was killed, investigators would accuse Majola of helping orchestrate his murder. But at this point, 4 days before the shooting, Warras was still alive. He was apparently concerned enough about threats to turn to the courts. Yet his security work continued, and on the 16th of December, he went back to Zambesi House. The work taking place that day was very specific. Contractors were installing a biometric access system in the foyer. In other words, entry into the building was becoming more tightly controlled. If access could now be restricted through biometric identification, whoever controlled movement inside Zambesi House was about to face a very different security environment. Warras was there to assist the contractors. At approximately 12:16 p.m., CCTV captured him leaving the building. He was wearing a black shirt. Another man in a white shirt was walking beside him. They moved toward Fox Street. According to evidence from the investigating officer, Warras then reached the Audi Q7 he had been using. He opened the passenger side, got inside briefly, and continued speaking on his phone. Nothing in those few seconds looks extraordinary when described on its own, but almost everything about those moments would later become evidence. The building, the vehicle, the cameras, the people standing nearby, even a bag. Warras closed the Audi, locked it, and started walking back toward Zambesi House. The clock had barely moved. Then people began diving for cover. The entire transition from ordinary afternoon to murder took less than a minute. CCTV examined by EWN showed the alleged gunman among the crowd after the shooting began. He was dressed casually, a green t-shirt, blue floral shorts, sandals, a cap. That detail matters because the earliest police descriptions of the suspects were not always identical to what later footage appeared to show. But the clearer footage gave investigators something much more useful: movement. The alleged shooter could be tracked. Another suspect could be seen nearby. And investigators began reconstructing what the men had done before and immediately after the attack. Warras was hit 5 times. Nothing was reported as a conventional robbery in which an attacker arrived to take his wallet or steal his vehicle. Instead, the gunman allegedly doubled back. CCTV showed him picking something up from the ground. Investigators considered whether it could have been the keys to Warras's Audi Q7. Those keys were reportedly never recovered. Then something even stranger appeared in the footage. Near the street vendors were 2 bags. One was described as a dark yellow gift bag. Another suspected accomplice was captured collecting the bags. And according to EWN's reporting on the investigation, police believed the firearm used to kill Warras had been concealed inside that gift bag. Earlier footage allegedly showed the suspected shooter carrying it after being pointed out or flagged by another man. After Warras was shot, the gunman and his alleged accomplice moved away toward Fox Street. Think about what investigators now had. Not simply a body and spent cartridges. They potentially had a visual sequence. Men arriving, men waiting. The victim emerging, the shooting, a bag, an escape route, and footage from before the murder. One investigating officer would later tell the court that Victor Majola could allegedly be seen with the shooter approximately 45 minutes before Warras was killed. Majola disputes the state's case against him and has not been convicted of Warras's murder. But for investigators, the footage provided a direction, and they moved quickly. On the 22nd of December 2025, 6 days after the murder, police arrested Victor Majola. He was charged with premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The state's allegation was not that Majola had personally fired the gun. Prosecutors accused him of playing a role in arranging the killing. Majola denied the allegations. During his bail proceedings, the defense argued that prosecutors had failed to produce sufficient direct evidence tying him to the murder. The case became heavily focused on CCTV. At one stage, the magistrate specifically ordered footage from a nearby butchery to be brought before the court. But investigators encountered another complication. The business reportedly kept recordings for only 10 days. By the time officials tried to obtain another copy directly from the premises, the original recording had already been overwritten after a copy had previously been supplied to police. That created arguments over how the footage should be handled and its evidential chain. Majola applied for bail. He didn't get it. The magistrate cited issues including conflicting residential addresses, concern about possible witness intimidation, and the possibility that he might flee. He has remained in custody as the case against him continues. But police still needed another man. The person they believed had actually fired the gun. For more than a month, investigators continued working. Then, at the end of January 2026, police arrested Armindo, also reported as Joaquim Armando, Pacola, in an informal settlement in Primrose on the East Rand. He was 25 years old and a Mozambican national. Police accused him of being the gunman captured in the CCTV footage. But what happened after his arrest is one of the most interesting parts of the investigation. Because Pacola did something investigators don't always get from an alleged contract killer. He began talking. Before his final guilty plea, months later, Pacola had already reportedly made a confession before a magistrate. Then, after his first appearance in February, he accompanied investigators back to Zambesi House. He physically pointed out the location from which he said he had fired the shots that killed DJ Warras. So months before his conviction, investigators already had the man they believed was the shooter effectively reconstructing his own involvement. And then came the money. Early reporting on the investigation said the total amount attached to the killing was 25,000 rand. EWN reported, citing sources close to the investigation, that this money was believed to have been divided among 3 people: the alleged shooter, an alleged accomplice seen on the CCTV, and the person believed to have supplied the firearm. According to that reporting, Pacola himself allegedly received around 7,000 rand of the total. Later, when he formally entered his plea, authorities described Pacola as having admitted killing Warras in exchange for 25,000 rand. Whichever way the payment was ultimately distributed, the most important fact was now clear. This had not been presented as spontaneous street violence. It was being treated as a contract killing. Somebody wanted Warrick Stock dead badly enough to put money behind it. And there was another disturbing development. One person investigators reportedly wanted to question would never make it into custody. According to News 24, another suspect linked to the case was killed before police could arrest him. The reporting said the man was ambushed and disarmed, and the firearm investigators believed may have been connected to the murder subsequently went missing. That meant a potential suspect was dead. And a potentially crucial physical piece of evidence was no longer where investigators expected it to be. It is important not to stretch that fact beyond what has been established. The circumstances of that man's death do not by themselves prove who organized Warras's murder. But as an investigative development, it made an already complicated case even stranger. One accused remained before the court. One suspected shooter was cooperating. Another potential suspect was reportedly dead, and the alleged murder weapon was missing. Meanwhile, prosecutors continued building their case against Victor Majola. They examined cell phone data, financial information, facial comparison evidence, and other material before transferring the case to the High Court. The state's theory connected the killing back to Zambesi House. Majola's girlfriend had been one of the people named in Warras's protection order application. The state alleged she was connected to the informal committee accused of collecting rent from residents. And investigators alleged Majola had been seen in the company of the shooter before the attack. But none of those allegations should be described as convictions. Majola remains entitled to have the state's evidence tested in court. And that distinction becomes even more important because of what Pakula eventually decided to do. On the 7th of August 2026, nearly 8 months after Warras was murdered, Pakula appeared in the Johannesburg High Court. There would be no trial to determine whether he had fired the gun. He admitted it. Pakula entered into a plea and sentence agreement with the state. He pleaded guilty to murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, unlawful possession of ammunition, and contravening South Africa's immigration laws. The agreement had been reached after consultation with Warras's family. The sentences were substantial: 25 years for murder, 8 years for unlawful possession of a firearm, 6 months for unlawful possession of ammunition, 12 months for the immigration offense. But the court ordered the sentences to run concurrently, meaning his effective prison sentence is 25 years. The man police believed had pulled the trigger was no longer merely an alleged gunman. He was a convicted murderer. But his conviction solved only the simplest part of the case: who fired the gun? Pakula admitted that. The much harder question was, who was behind him? There is a temptation in true crime to look for one dramatic explanation. One argument, one enemy, one moment that caused everything. Armindo Pakula will spend 25 years in prison, but the story does not end with him. The state continues to prosecute Victor Majola, whom it accuses of involvement in organizing Warras's murder. Majola has not been convicted and continues to face the case against him separately. As of the latest reporting available before his next scheduled proceedings, his pretrial matter was due to continue in August 2026. Maybe the remaining court process will eventually explain every part of what happened. Maybe it won't. What the courts have not yet finally established is the person at the other end of that transaction. The person who allegedly looked at a 40-year-old father, broadcaster, and businessman and decided his life had a price. Who ordered the killing of DJ Warras?